Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. And I am up here in the right-hand corner, left-hand corner of the screen today because I've got all my guests on the show today with me here. And I'm very, very excited. These four people, I'm five, represent part of the top 10 episodes that Eating at a Meeting has produced in the last 100 episodes, and we are at 300 today. So I'm so excited to welcome them back. They've all been on the show before, Laurel and Erin a couple of times, Ewan and Tess once each, but I'm excited to welcome back. And those topics that we talked about before, I will share the links to those episodes in the chats here today. But Erin and Ewan were chatting about last time raising why we need clear alcohol labels on bottles of alcohol. Tess and I talked about, we reconnected together recapping a food and beverage experience that we had just shared at an industry conference. And she and I have been to multiple conferences together, so we can talk about how we eat or don't eat well at conferences. And Laurel was on a couple of times, but the most recent one is how the ADA law applies to food and beverage at events. And so we're going to kind of rehash those topics of conversation because they were the top hits for the last 100 episodes. And welcome to the show, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. And then actually, let me tell you who everybody is. So Erin down below me here, she is the executive director and founder of Allergies Strong. Tess Vismale is the founder of iSocial X, and she's a speaker and a voice of God. That's what you put on there? Voice of God.
I did.
And an event rescuer. Ewan Phillips, who is the only one from across the pond today. He is the CEO and founder of And It Has, which is an app that helps people with food allergies or anyone understand what ingredients are in the foods that you're looking at. And then Laurel is an attorney, and she specializes and advocates for legal services for families affected by food allergies. So just to give context of what we've talked about and who they are. So again, welcome everybody. And before we got on the show, we were talking about kind of a lot of stuff that's going on in the United States here. We're going to focus still on these things and how we do that. But I think we can all touch on this very first topic that I want to talk about is the transparency in food and beverage, because I think it touches all of us. Why clear labeling matters from alcohol to allergens. And I think Ewan and Tess, you and I were all at events recently, but Ewan, can you talk about the one that you were just at and where the miscommunication with some labeling was and how it was important?
Yeah, definitely. In the UK, we've had a few recent events where I've gone with colleagues and we've asked for information about allergens, ingredients in the food, and the staff just don't know. That they've got to try and go and find it. And they make it a very painful kind of experience to find the information that should be really easy and at hand. And a few years ago, I used to have a community cafe. We'd always have labels, really clear labels saying all the allergens that were in each item to make it very clear, very easy for people to navigate. And then we'd have more data behind the scenes if somebody needed to know items outside the 14. But these two events were just really well below par, really sketchy with just not having the information and staff not being really allergy aware at all about kind of like, well, why are you asking that? And it's like, well, I need to know. I'd quite like to know what's in the food before I can decide whether it's a safe item to eat or not or drink. So we do have laws in the UK, but they're misunderstood sometimes. And businesses kind of events and event catering can often be missed out. Venues are quite good. Coming to a restaurant, bar, pub is quite good. But kind of still catering food coming to your workplace for a party or whatever is still sketchy, and we want to improve that. And that's really what we do. That's our day-to-day work. And drinks, we've had incidences where people have been injured by the drink they've had, which has been pretty horrific in the UK.
Yeah, I think the biggest story I saw on that was a couple of years ago with the woman who had an anaphylactic to egg that was in her cocktail, and it wasn't disclosed. Yeah. So, Tess,
Yeah.
you and I've been to a couple of events recently together. How is that labeling there?
I can't say better. I would say they were a little bit more aware than before. I still think the one that we had attended this summer was probably by far the best I'd seen in recent time. Um, but I'm always still having to constantly ask questions. So, say
Mhm,
for instance, there are two buffet lines. At breakfast, you decide to create an area that has what I'm going to call specialty foods, gluten free and all of that separated from that. You didn't tell me what was in the eggs. You didn't,
mhm,
because lots of people put gluten in their eggs, right? You didn't tell me whether they are or not, but then on another sign, you do tell me, right? So there's no, so I have challenges with consistency. So I'm always
mhm,
having to push the envelope. Or, for instance, another event, which wasn't an industry event I went to, they have gluten-free breads available or items, let's say, available upon request, but you didn't put a sign out saying that. So
mhm,
I'm coming through a line saying I can't eat, but you haven't communicated that to me. But luckily, I was working on site, right? And I was saying, as I'm walking the line, and I always have to do all of that well ahead of time, I'm saying, put the sign out saying gluten free upon request. So then
mhm,
someone can feel like they've been included and thought about, and that you could actually use the food that you actually purchased, maybe instead of letting it go bad, maybe, possibly.
mhm,
And then I'm also still finding plenty of servers who are uneducated around the gravity of it, almost to a point of being attitudinal about it or
mhm.
defensive or still making it not as a priority or taking it as serious. And I'm floored with the fact that we've had a recent death around it that was very public, right? And you
Mhm,
would have
mhm.
thought there were some shifts
Right.
happening and occurring. So
Yeah. Erin and Laurel, do you want to pipe in on any of that?
Okay, so I was just going to say, I was thinking of a case that I have right now against a restaurant, and their defense is the woman who was having an anaphylactic shock should have taken her vomit out of the toilet and brought it in to be tested, and
I'm sorry,
therefore,
what?
yeah, yeah,
Oh my
I've
gosh.
never heard of that before, but they just testified to that the other day that she should have taken the vomit with a cup out of the toilet and brought it to the hospital and tested because they said that we didn't have any sesame in that food. We didn't.
but
And we
isn't the
can't
word
prove it.
shock and anaphylactic, regardless of how nasty that is? But isn't shock in there? So aren't there things that happen when people are in shock? So who would think that?
I just, so it's just, I'm hearing more and more of these crazy defenses the more I do,
Right.
which I think just makes people not, it gives a bad impression of the restaurant. Let's say,
Right.
if
Well, and, okay, and the fact that norovirus is going around right now, I mean, very, very prevalent. You want them to take vomit out of something and take it across your kitchen or across your restaurant. Oh my
Right.
gosh.
Right.
Wow.
It
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 makes
feels like, yeah, sorry, Ewan, go ahead, please.
it just makes you really question where like human empathy and human understanding is, because we're here to support each other and look after each other and keep each other safe. And if things happened in your venue, you need to take some responsibility and help that journey get better from what's just happened. You can't then say to the affected customer, you should have done this while that was happening, when they're trying to stay alive or trying not to fall into a really bad situation that's
I'm just
horrific.
flabbergasted by that.
I was about to say something similar, that it sort of
Okay.
it makes you question the word hospitality.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I was
Yeah,
gonna
like,
say too. I was like,
yeah,
what industry are we in again?
Right. It really makes you question that terminology when you think of people having to go really far out of the way to get answers to simple questions about ingredients. I mean, we all deserve transparency in our food and the things that we consume, medications, personal care items, all of them, because we're all making health decisions about it, whether we have food allergies or other conditions, or frankly, whether we're just protecting our health, because we know that there's a lot of things that are in both edible and non-edible products that touch our bodies that are probably not great for us or are definitively not great for us. And we all have to make personal choices about what we consume, how much of that we consume, et cetera. So the transparency issue is not a new one, and it's not one that's totally unique to a group of people that have chronic disease like food allergy.
No,
Yeah.
Tracy, I wanted to say something too, just about that too, because I'm seeing more and more, and we might get to that a little later, is people who it's become frustrating for planners like us, not me, but planners like us who feel as though people who don't have challenges with their eating habits, taking the food from those of us who do, and then consuming it, and then them trying to have to manage it. So then, therefore, they even get a more attitude about it or more put off about it or not wanting to take the steps that we're talking about taking. So,
Yeah. Well, and it's I can even, I remember that situation where we were at the breakfast bar, right? And there's that separate table of that, and
right.
everybody's going to that thing because it looks like that's the toast that's set up and that's the toasters and everything like that. And it's not identified. I mean, at that other event, it was in Detroit, and they had the convention center had done a really big sign that said gluten-free, right? And it was vertical, and it was, granted, the food was on the same buffet, but there was a big sign to say, hey, this is gluten-free. I mean,
So you were really clear around that.
Right.
There's no
right. But it is, and people just assume that, hey, I mean, and I want food to be for everybody, right? Let's make the meals that are free of these allergens so that everybody can eat them with ease. But that seems to be the biggest challenge, along with staff who doesn't get it. Yeah.
And keeping it away from cross-contamination.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're going to put vegetables on a buffet line, and then everyone's going to get a vegetable because everyone likes vegetables, right? But then the person who's eating something, will only eat things that don't have eyes, then what? Then you've taken that food away from that person, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And you've put it on the buffet.
Yeah. Well, in this event that I went to last week, it was interesting. They made 2 chafing dishes of eggs, and one of them had roasted peppers and whatever on, the other one didn't. But so there's 2 chafing dishes with eggs on it. Why could you just not put the peppers and things on the side to do that? I'm like, you don't need that many eggs. But it's food waste and food costs is a whole nother topic. But Laurel, in your cases, I mean, the challenges of is it labeling across the board that are the challenges, or where are you seeing it that people are complaining? I mean, besides, staff not being knowledgeable, is it more restaurant service that you're seeing this in, or?
Yeah, restaurant service and training. So in Massachusetts, we had the first restaurant law from food allergies, and it required the person in charge of every shift to watch a training video. It was a 30-minute training video, and they would get a certificate after watching it. And you could walk away from the video and still get your certificate. So a food allergy mother has now brought a new law that was just passed and put into effect, saying that training isn't enough. Now restaurants in Massachusetts have to undergo comprehensive training. And so that just came into effect. And a lot of the restaurants don't even know that these training requirements, even the original ones to take the video, they didn't know that they had a legal obligation to do that. So I think training is really the biggest issue that I'm seeing, and that leads to the lawsuits, that leads to the mistakes and the misunderstandings.
Yeah. Well, and actually I've been looking up because there's 7 states that have updated and said they're adopting the 2022 FDA food code, US FDA food code. So I was reaching out to all of them to see how it's being implemented, and like Colorado, I reached out to them and I said, okay, how is this being implemented? And I'm going to Denver soon. And they're like, well, this is being implemented across the state, but Denver and the county of Denver have different rules and regulations. So, and they are adhering to, Colorado itself is adhering to the law, like unpackaged food has to be labeled with labels, et cetera, for the consumer. But in the city of Denver and the county of Denver, that's not the case. And then Mississippi, in their email, they said, Yeah, it's just about training and adding sesame to the thing, but we're not doing anything about implementation of labeling of unpackaged food. And this is all the FDA unpackaged food. So it's very inconsistent, and which I knew going into it, because the food code is just a guideline. But I'm trying to get those 7 states so that we can spell it out. This is exactly what it means and what it does. But like somebody going to Colorado, they're going to go to Aspen, and then they're going to have different rules when they go to the convention center.
Yes.
Wow.
Which is
That's
a
not
larger
gonna-
concentration of people.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that's really disconcerting for me, and how somebody's traveling through that. And you, and that's kind of the same thing with you. I'm like, you go from, if you're visiting London and then you go to Paris and then you go to Switzerland or Lithuania. I mean, the rules are, the guidelines are different, but it's labeled, the labeling regulations are different.
Yeah, they're all slightly different. We've just launched with a brand in Saudi Arabia, which is really interesting, kind of going through the data. Saudi Arabia doing like a Arabic, English kind of bilingual menu and platform. That was really interesting, kind of working with the teams there to understand what they need, how they need it. And what we did, because the concentration of people that would come to Saudi maybe could come from the UK, could come from the States. They're used to more data. So we found a way to provide more data and make it more useful, because the whole work that And It Has does is about being really clear about every ingredient, every sub-ingredient in the food, all cross-contamination risk, all may contain risk. So very quickly, within 2 seconds, customers know what to expect, that they've got kind of a level field to understand what food and what drink they can have. Kind of recently in the UK, in England, I don't know if you have it in the States, but we have people that knock on our doors selling direct debits for charities and organizations. So I work from home. A lady knocked on my door, was selling direct debits for Oxfam, a big charity in the UK. And then part of her story was like, what do you do for work? Why are you at home? And I said, I work with allergies, ingredients, nutritional data. And she was, she said, I'm allergic to coconut. And I was like, coconut, that's really tricky, because it's in the UK, it's outside 14. So there's no legal obligation to share that data with customers.
Same here. Yeah.
And I said, well, eating out must be really hard. And she said, it's awful. And then she's kind of mid-20s, so we call them Gen Z. I don't know if that's the same thing in the States. And I just said randomly, have you heard of a brand called Wingstop? And her whole body changed, her face changed. She said, Wingstop. I go there all the time with my friends. They've got this app, and we know exactly what we're having. And I went, that's my app. And all my hair's stuck up all over my body, thinking, this is my target audience. This woman knocking on my door randomly when I was doing some dry report. And we just talk about, she is why we do what we do, and she has a really good eating out experience because she's got full data, she's got full understanding. And in the UK, the Wingstop team are amazing in the UK about how they want to share everything with their customers, so they keep their customers safe, but the staff are really trained really well. They've got really good knowledge, and with Laurel, it is the thing about the training. If the training's not there, the comprehension's not there, you show someone, oh, that's a sesame seed on my finger, that could kill somebody, and somebody's like looking at you like you're an alien. They don't get what you're talking about. That's our problem. Those people that don't get it because they've got no context, they've got no contextualization of what it is. Once we can train them to teach them, that I think that's where we'll have that move change, where people get it. Like food, like road safety videos in the UK when I was a kid, I remember every single one about how horrific the death or the injury was. We should be doing the same around kind of allergy awareness and kind of food safety awareness, because I think people would then get it. And then when people get it, we're all human. We'll realize that actually we can be the difference that keeps our customers alive and safe.
Yeah.
True. Very, very true. Hey, we've got Roger from IMEX over here on Instagram listening to us from sunny. Hopefully it's sunny there. But he just asked me about the pointed the direction of where you can find the updates to the FDA guidelines. So Roger, I'm going to give you the link that it's from Retail Food Safety Collaborative.org. That's it shows you actually, I'm going to put this up here too. It shows you what states have adopted, what food code each state has adopted. And then I will actually also give you the link to the FDA food code, the 2022 food code, and where that information lies as well. But this map, the link I have up here, it tells you what states have adopted which food code. There's one state that's still using the 1995 food code.
Well, if I could jump in, the FDA also has an allergen framework for retail establishments. So I spent the past 2 years working on updating that, and we're going to be presenting it in Denver next month.
Oh, really?
But
Oh,
What
wow.
days? I'm going to be in Denver next month.
the week of the 21st, I think. Or 20
Oh, I need to change my flight and come early.
But anyway, on the FDA's website, it's called the Allergen Framework, and it has guides and tools for restaurateurs on best practices.
Okay, cool. Oh, I definitely will need to look at that. That's exciting because it is okay. What? So it was the FDA allergen food code or allergen
Framework.
Okay, I will find that and put that in here as well. No, that's fantastic, and it's we're moving forward and it's getting better, and there's lots of people working on it, but it's still there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. How and that really ties us into the health and safety aspect of it. And Erin, you're really in tuned with a lot of this unpackaged food side of it as well. Are we doing enough to protect consumers and attendees as it relates to allergens?
Yes and no. Things are getting better. So I do agree with you. As I'm speaking purely from the attendee point of view, right? I think that we expect more from our events. We expect more from our restaurants and our venues that we go to. I think people are surprised, for example, when there's not a gluten-free offering or better labeling, which is great. That's good that people are surprised because it means they've come to start expecting that. But we've also expected that that the system is imperfect. A lot of people don't trust the labeling that's there if it looks incomplete. Sometimes the labeling is not specific enough. For example, like they'll say something like and spices or and sauce or something where it's like they put a general category. You guys, I know, all understand that's not enough. So that makes them question the rest of all the offerings that are there. And again, it comes back to what you're saying, which is education and training. And so one of the things that I think is really important at this point is that, I think for those that are in the food on the industry side, if they don't have food allergies, they likely know somebody. It's 1 in 10 people in the United States. So, I mean, if you know 10 people, you don't have to be best friends with 10 people. You know someone with a food allergy. 10% of every conference you go to, every baseball stadium you're at, every classroom, everywhere, 10% of those people have food allergies of some variety. So, it just shows you what a common issue this is. So to claim ignorance is really difficult at this stage, I think. When I hear Laurel, I hear what restaurants are telling you, but you have to imagine they're in service industry, 10% of their customers. That it does seem ignorant at this point to assume that this is more like the rare exception rather than the daily occurrence that someone's going to ask about ingredients because it's critical to their health. And the other point that I think you guys have all made very well is that there's a lot of inconsistencies varying by both county, city, and state. And so that's something that, not to mention country, my gosh, but that's something that patients and those with food allergies and other chronic conditions that require medically necessary diets, they may not be aware of. They may not be aware or may forget that Massachusetts has a great system in place. And then they go right across the border to Maine. And their training and requirements are totally different. Or here, I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. So we live in sort of a tri-regional area because the district is not a state. I was going to say tri-state, but that's not correct. But still, all three areas, which are each within 10 minutes of where I stand right now. So I'm just as likely to go to dinner, in Virginia as I am in Maryland, as I am in the district. And all three of those have different laws. And as a typical consumer, I'm not really aware of what those changes are or how they vary or what to expect or what my rights are in one place or another. And so that's another piece of the puzzle. And that's where advocacy organizations like mine come into play in terms of trying to get patients up to speed so they have their expectations straight. That said, it would be better to have some sort of uniformity, at least across the country.
Yeah, and I would say,
100%.
I'm sorry, Tracy. I was
No,
gonna
go
say
ahead.
I'd love to see it just on more of the work that you doing and you've been doing for a long time about coaching people around labeling and what is
Mhm,
the best way to be labeled. Like I think there should be uniformity around that labeling at events and meetings and in restaurants.
mhm,
So that I could consistently, when I go to a restaurant, it's labeled this way.
mhm.
And then when I come to an event, it's labeled consistently that way. And then I'm always looking for it. So again, I know that takes lots of money to put an advocacy campaign together around education and putting it into the community, but it really shouldn't these days. We shouldn't have to rely on large institutions and dollars to make this happen.
Mhm.
Agreed. Agreed. I think
Yeah.
there are some simple common sense ways that can be helpful to everyone. And it really involves just calling out the allergens and the derivatives of those allergens directly, first and foremost. And it also involves something that seems really simple to me anyway, which is having someone knowledgeable on hand at events or in
Mhm.
restaurants to answer questions.
Yeah.
Because there will
Yeah.
be someone that whose allergen
Yeah.
falls outside the top, not in the United States, top 9 allergens. And we need someone that gets it to help us track down information. So once again, we can
Mhm.
make decisions about our own health. But
Right.
the critical piece is that someone has to get it and have had
Right.
the training. But it makes sense to me to have an advocate on site that represents the business, but understands allergies and food safety in general.
And talking about uniformity, oh, I'm sorry, I just wanted to briefly say what about allergen precautionary statements like may
Mhm.
contain? There's no regulation of those.
There's no
and
regulation on those.
Yeah.
there's
Yeah, definitely.
thousands of them, and nobody knows what they mean. So there needs to be
Right.
consistency among
They
that.
essentially don't mean anything at this point.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
would say
Ye-
what translates over really well, you all that I've seen work where a planner who had I think maybe it might have been 3,000 attendees, and of that, it was way more than 10% who had filled out information about dietary restrictions of
Mhm.
some sort.
Yeah.
So what she did was she was proactive, and there were long lines of buffets right near the general sessions and all of that. So
Mm.
she created, it was just a cubby hole, if you will, or a corner of the venue separate from the regular buffets, where that entire area was for dietary restrictions, and placed a chef in there. There's some action stations, but not to work the buffet lines or to work the action stations. Specifically, a chef, actually the person who's advocating and giving them the information that they need when they had to do it. But that
Mhm.
was, to me, the only one that I had ever seen where it was that much of a concerted effort to
Mhm.
put towards education, where you had a live person. So it was not so much onus on the planner
Mhm.
um, to constantly keep pushing. The actual venue was taking responsibilities, and then they know exactly what they're putting in their own food. So
Right.
I love that.
You mean when the chef yells at you, say, "Well, I make the food. I'm not responsible for labeling it."
yeah, that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Ewan, what is the regulation in UK specifically on like the may contains? Is there anything? And I know that you all are advocating to get a food czar. What is that?
And allergies are
Allergies are, yes,
yeah.
allergies are. Thank you.
So but may contain is still really sketchy in the UK. People are supposed to have precautionary allergen labeling where it says the risks, what could be in a product. But some businesses, especially smaller businesses, in some cases just don't get that they have to look at the whole label of a product that's going into one of their recipes that becomes one of their dishes, that they have to then share that story through their products. So it's a comprehension thing as well with people understanding. What we do, different brands we work with, we spend a lot of time with the whole supply chain to understand where the risks are, how they come through the business. We've often changed lots of data codes of different brands because things have been missed out, and we've picked them up on our kind of micro kind of analysis of detail. But it should be included, but often it's not. There's an article I was part of yesterday that was 39% of vegan products in the UK sold may contain elements of dairy and milk, but it's not really clearly labelled. and that is terrifying. That's like that's a massive number. And also, yeah, we can't rely on vegan products being allergy safe, but people have kind of fallen into quite a few bad deaths and illness through thinking that's okay, because they've not been given the may contain risk, so they thought it was okay because it's vegan, which is kind of what we're talking about. So yeah, the labeling is unclear. It needs to be much better, and it really can be better with consideration, with planning, with understanding, with the whole supply chain working together, with the venue, with the end user. If people work together and go in the same way of the tide of the stream, we can make that work. It's when people want to hide things because they want to sell more of a product that they don't really share it. That's when things really, really do go wrong. And we just need to be really transparent, really open. And also, I'm working with a few brands, and I say, well, don't have that product. If that product can't give you a really safe kind of data sheet, let's move away from that product and find another supplier that can give you a very clear product, a very safe product that doesn't have these possible risks that aren't really clear. And why would you have fish in a milkshake or whatever? Because it can be some for fish in a milkshake is a bad example, but sometimes people put,
I'm sure somebody's done it though.
Well, it's illegal now in the UK to have alibi labeling. Everything is something. Everything is in everything. We had that for a while in the UK. Okay. So you could buy something and it's got the 14 allergens that could be in it, and that's why I give the milkshake example, because then kind of it makes how ridiculous it really is, and that devalues everything that's been done. But now that EHOs, environmental health officers, and trading standard teams are picking businesses up on that. Say, well, that's not acceptable. You need to be very clear, and that's where the granular data that we work with that helps that journey be really safe and really clear. So a lot of waffle, but the answer is that it's not clear in the UK. It should be a lot better. But again, we need education training for businesses and operatives working in those businesses, people that take in a delivery and check properly. But people don't, because people are time poor.
Yeah, time poor and staff lacking. And I mean, I like the statistic, and Erin, you should be familiar with this too. Gluten-free and allergy passports. I think her last report said that 91% of people who are food allergic will come back to an establishment multiple times if they had a great experience. And I mean, and I use that stat all the time. And then if you look at Shandy's stat from Certistar, that a food allergic person's bill is typically, I think, 38 to 40% less than a non-food allergic person's bill. Like if you can get that person to come back, give them a great experience, come back 91% of the time, and have items that meet their needs more than 38, like you've got money in the bank.
And then you've got those people's family who join them or friends. So it grows exponentially.
It's an ecosystem, because then they'll learn how to prepare the foods. They'll learn how to be advocates for them, when in their areas, and so on.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we're enthusiastic, not just return loyal customers, but we're enthusiastic about, sort of proselytizing how great a restaurant or a food service is when they go above and beyond, because we recognize that there's extra effort. This is not like taken for granted by someone who has food allergies. We understand. And in fact, those with food allergies often feel really, really nervous about asking questions. We can be nervous customers. So if you can put us at ease and give us a great experience like you do for other customers, there's nothing like that. And I mean, that's really the true definition of hospitality to me. I mean, to go back to that again, that's the real true definition. If I had someone who came to my house who had something that they couldn't eat, would I just let them sit at the table and not eat anything? No, none of us would do that. So why would a restaurant, sorry.
And we tip well too.
We do tip well. We just got a comment saying
that's what Heather said that as well.
Heather, we agree. Yeah, we tip very well. So no, it is worth everyone's time, I think, and energy. It definitely gets the repeat business. It comes with friends and family and a whole bunch of others. So it's great exposure.
Well, I was in the Orlando airport, and oh, what's the steakhouse that's in the Orlando airport by Delta? Or Tess, you should know that. Outback. And because it's the only main restaurant in there. And I was asking questions about the food, and she's like, oh, no. The bartender's like, no, you can eat this, you can eat this, you can't eat this, don't do this because of the spice. And I mean, the bartender knew. And because she'd been asked so many times, I tipped her the amount of my bill.
Wow.
You know, like I gave her 20, I think it was like, I mean, it was just crazy because I'm like, she was so knowledgeable, and I'm not to diss a bartender, you know, in their job, but she's also the one serving the food, and she was so good at it. I'm like, I'll go back and eat at that Outback, hands down.
And see, now I will.
Yeah, exactly. Because she knew what she was doing, and she knew about the ingredients in the food that they were preparing and how it was prepared. And, you know, in an airport, I mean, the kitchen's not close, right?
Yeah, that's a tricky place to get all that information and be able to eat safely.
Exactly.
I feel like we all might want to fly down to Orlando just to get a good meal.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's in the Delta terminal.
I'll meet you there, everybody.
Laurel, I mean, we chatted in the last one about the United case, you know, with celiac, you know, United not providing, you know, safe meals for the pilot who has celiac disease. And then we still have the case, you know, in Disney in Orlando. Haven't heard anything about Dominique Brown in California and her death from a food allergic reaction. What are you seeing around this, you know, in the United States specifically? And is it, I know you said there's some challenges in, you know, some of the states of what's going on. Can you give us an update on any of that?
In terms of the loss itself,
Mm-hmm.
or how?
Yeah.
I think they're getting more and more lawsuits now because people are more aware of their rights, and there are more people who have food allergies and other restrictions. But, you know, so one of the things that does bother me right now is the Department of Justice isn't taking new complaints, and they enforce the ADA. So that needs to be addressed. We need to get the Department of Justice back online. But you know, it's just more and more lawsuits and more law. And in the more cases I have, the more excuses I get with people not wanting to accommodate or why they made the mistake. And I just think knowledge goes a long way. Once they know what's going on and they understand. So for instance, I had a case in Massachusetts, the only verdict in a food allergy case in Massachusetts, and the restaurant had to pay over $200,000.
Wow.
Plus attorney's fees. So I think maybe that would send a message that, look, if you're doing it wrong and you tick off the wrong customer, or, you know, you're facing a big liability. So hopefully that things like that will get the message to them, but it's gradual.
Well, and the fact that we know the amount of money, I think, is one also instance, because there's some that are settled out of court, and we don't know.
Settled out of court. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so we don't know what they agreed to, or how much money they had to pay, or, you know, things like that. But does that help make change?
Well, sometimes. So what I always do is I ask so if I'm negotiating a case and we're in mediation, for instance, I'll ask that one of the conditions be that the restaurant undergoes retraining, and that put that as part of the settlement agreement. And I've had many restaurants who've agreed to that. Some don't. But I try to always incorporate that. So it's not just about money, it's about understanding and training. And another thing that I also have done in cases, I've said donations to food allergy organizations. And say, you know, and that shows that you get it and you're helping to solve the problem. So I've had some cases where restaurants have given money to the big allergy organizations, and which I think is a win-win, because they can write that off as a tax donation, and they can, you know, advertise, hey, we gave to a great food allergy charity. So I try to make sure that my settlements contain things other than just money, so that there will be lessons learned and change going forward.
Yeah, lessons learned is definitely a huge one across the board. What do we see? This is kind of a touchy subject at the moment, but what needs to change now? I'm thinking of future predictions. Here in the States and in the UK, Ewan, to think about that, what needs to change now for a better food and beverage experience? I mean, we've mentioned training, we've mentioned the Justice Department taking new cases. What other things would you all want to see done? And Tess, you can bring that into that event planning side if you want.
Well,
Um,
I'll just start from just reiterating what I just said in terms of what a planner did. I'd like to see planners literally, if you're designing a meeting, you need to design with um, thinking about the plan for the people as they're moving through, eating through your meeting, right? It's eating in a meeting, right? So you're eating
right.
through your meeting. And the fact that you should be able to partner with your chefs to create an experience that's very different and separating that and making sure that it happens in real time, that you don't say it, you've asked for it, that you've designated someone to work on site. There are those of us who love to work on site who actually can run your F&B and follow up with that and make sure that they're there when people are trying to eat. That I'm not just checking a BEO, looking and see if the food is okay and going on to the next session. That someone is actually in place from your team and then also in place from the venue as well. So those are logistical things and design things that can happen.
Yeah. Erin?
Well, I think one thing that would help us kind of give us overall improvement is kind of goes back to what you and I talked about on our last podcast, is cinching up the alcohol labeling, because people in the United States really don't understand on the whole that alcohol is governed by an entirely different body. It's not governed by the FDA. So it does not fall under regular labeling laws. And many adults who are already adjusting to their food allergies or adjusting to adulthood, which involves alcohol in so many different respects, really struggle with this issue. And so while it's not one that affects children as much, it is one that would be really helpful. And so we are making progress in that realm. I'm really happy to tell you, to give you an update that there is some progress. Actually, just about 2 weeks ago, the TTB, which is the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, the former ATF, which governs alcohol. It's part of the Department of Treasury, which once again, none of us would think of as a food-related body, but it is suggesting mandatory allergen labeling that is similar to the food labeling here in the United States. They're still requesting comment. This is far from being a done deal. However, it's a step in the right direction. And so there is a comment period, I say out loud in case anyone would like to comment, until April. So please submit comments. The last round the food allergy community submitted over 4,000 comments. So that was very significant, and it really has helped move the marker to where we are today. But getting that labeled would be really a step in the right direction. And I'm hoping it would not only impact alcohol purchasing, which by the way, I think would expand alcohol purchasing by those who have allergens, because I think it would show us that many more things are actually safe for us than we thought. But at least I hope that's the case. My hope is that it does that. But I think it might also help us get other legislation over the goalposts, like allergen labeling in over-the-counter and prescription medication and elsewhere. So I'm hoping this one step could lead to other steps where we see more transparency.
Well, and I just found and posted up here the TTB's. I don't know if it's going to show on here. That's a long link, but it is the link to the TTB. It says proposes mandatory disclosures of major allergens and alcohol facts in the labeling of wines. So that should get everybody to the right links that you need to if you want to make comments too.
Yeah, and you can
That's
read
huge.
The history of where we are. Yeah, it's. I'm really thrilled to at least report that recommendation is being put out there, and they seem to support it, and they give some justification, and they quote a lot of our advocacy efforts that have gotten us there, which is hopefully helpful in giving everyone else the language they need to make the current comments in the comment period even more useful. So thanks to everyone who's already made comments and who are looking at that. And again, but back to Laurel's point, it will only go so far if it doesn't include training. and awareness and knowledge. And
Mm-hmm.
so we do have a long way to go. Follow up, once you get the law passed, that's only really 50% of the battle. The other 50% lies in implementation. So we do still have a long way to go.
Well, and that brings up a point. So I think, and you might not be aware of this, but the Sergio Lopez Food Allergy Awareness Act, it was enacted in Texas in September 1st of 2023. It became effective September 1st, 2024. But when talking to a health inspector in one of the counties in Texas, she's like, well, it hasn't been added to the Texas food code yet. So and I was talking to her in like October, November timeframe, and she said she's going to have her inspector start asking in January and providing the posters for it. Because so I'm like, you had 1 year, from the time it was enacted to the time it became effective. And then this is 2-3 months later. And, you're not even talking about it until 4 months later after the fact. So that is the challenge as well, is like, these things get passed. But when I was talking to that hotel chefs, one of them knew about it and the other one didn't.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's where it gets lost.
I'm not surprised. When it came to alcohol labeling, it required a lawsuit to get this moving. They were supposed to review the data in like, I'm making the date up a little bit, but I think it's around 2006. I mean, we're like that many years overdue for reevaluation. And it required a lawsuit to get them to do that. So in some ways that's not surprising. And in other ways it's totally shocking because it didn't require a lot to do it. Right. Alcohol labeling is a little bit different, but still that many years overdue. No, awareness campaigns should be up and running, and they're just common sense at this point.
Right. Well, and it took Sergio's mom 10 years to even get the law passed. So
back to the same point. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Ewan, what about you? What are you looking for in the future around now for better food and beverage experiences?
Full disclosure, in the UK we have lots of products with special recipes or special ingredients or family recipes or secret ingredients that's not helpful to anybody at all. And you can take the bottle to a lab and they can tell you what's in it. So there's no point in hiding it, because if a person that really needs to know what's in it, they will be able to find out what's in it. So it's a real non-starter. I remember we've got a big venue. I live in a place called Ipswich in Suffolk, and we've got a big venue outside our town. And a lady allergic to almonds was planning her big work party. I think it was her birthday and her work Christmas party. She did all the research with the catering team. They planned all the food so she could eat everything. She can enjoy all the food, eat everything, and not worry. Talk to her team, talk to her family, everybody that was with her. On the event, she went to hospital after half an hour because they forgot to do the drinks, and she drank prosecco.
Wow.
The prosecco had almond finings in it, and she was straight to hospital. And it's just like, you can't make these stories up because it's so horrific. But again, it was, you grab the label, you grab this Italian bottle of prosecco, you look at the label, it's not telling you anything about almonds. It's not telling you the fining process that's involved. So that labeling obviously needs to be massively improved. People need to be open and honest, but people in the supply chain need to know what they're doing with their product at the beginning and planning it. They could have found a different fining solution, or just share that it's got almonds, and she could have gone for another brand. But like stories like that, where you do all that research, you do all that planning, you think you've aced it, and then suddenly you find out that that's not the case, and you've gone to hospital and you've missed the thing you were there to do. And so yeah. And
she was the birthday person. Yeah,
she was it was her company, the birthday person, and everyone. What would you do when your host suddenly vanishes? Is everyone going to dance and have fun? They're probably not. They're going to be thinking, is she okay? Is she made it? Is she safe? Is she stable? You're not going to just have a great time. You're going to be worrying. But yes, so the answer for me, what do I want to see in the future? Just everyone being really honest, open, clear, considered about what they do, and share that through the whole journey, the whole supply chain. That's the only way we can be safer as customers. That's the only way we can support and empower and help our front of house teams and bartenders. And it's the only way the businesses can be stronger, their brand reputations can be stronger. And also for the suppliers and producers, celebrate what they make and share provenance. We're doing some provenance work at the moment about celebrating where the different component ingredients come from, like special kind of
that's a
like
great idea.
DOP areas. We do work around kind of like celebrating where that beef comes from or where that certain cheese comes from, and that goes to our platform. It celebrates what they do, and that's why they're unique. So just kind of like just celebrate what you do, and if it's not good, look at how you can change it. Better suppliers, better products, less artificial ingredients, whatever people need to do for their own USP for their brand. Yeah,
Right.
Clarity and ease, and then for us as customers, like if you use a platform like ours, 2 seconds you can see what you can have. So you know you're considered a good experience pre-event and at the event when you're there as well.
And there can be criminal liability in the UK, right? I know a few restaurants have been held criminally liable for making deliberate things. Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
Sorry, Tracy. No, even comprehension. Oh, sorry. Laurel, some of it was about comprehension, people saying what they thought was in a product, but forgetting that in one of the cases, the chef was marinating a piece of chicken in buttermilk and then frying it, but they didn't think milk was in the chicken. And it was just really awful. It was an awful, somebody, Owen Carey died from that on his 18th birthday, but his family did the research, went to the venue, checked again, checked with the bartender. The bartender checked with the kitchen, but something went so wrong that the person making it didn't realize that was involved in the final output. And again, it's a training comprehension story, isn't it? About kind of being aware, understanding. So no,
and actually that story reminds me of going back to the Sergio Lopez story, because he was asking if there were peanuts in the taco when he ordered it, when he picked it up, and then when he was eating it and going into anaphylactic shock. And then when his mother went back to the restaurant a few days later to inquire, hey, and you get to learn our secret sauce. And she's like, well, what's in the secret sauce? And they're like, peanut butter. And her friend is like, well, he was asking about peanuts. And he goes, yeah, he was asking about peanuts, not peanut butter. So Laura, I would be interested to find out, what happened with that case legally wise, because I'd be suing the crap out of that company, that restaurant. But I mean, that is the thing. I'm like, Ewan, you cooked it in buttermilk. That means there's milk in the chicken. Yeah. In that dish.
And in the UK, we've got a big issue with pea protein at the moment. So from the peanut family, we've got pea protein. Lots of people are having reactions to it. It's in a lot of things. It's a bulker for lots of different products. That's really hard. So in the future, will that change? Will that become number 15? Will it become number 16 of our allergen list in the UK and maybe Europe? I don't know. But our platform enables the guests to do that. So that makes it really useful for them. Well,
and I think here in the States, like some of the fast food chains had started adding that to their French fries.
Yeah. Pea protein is increasingly becoming a problem here as well, as is lupine, just like you guys have in the UK and EU. So we're right behind you on the trend.
Yeah. And then our friends, 2 Alpha Gals and the Alpha Gal Foundation are pushing for Alpha Gal to be the 10th top allergen listed here, which is the mammalian meat, which I think would like shut everybody down because of the animal-based products that are in foods that people don't think about. Okay, Laurel, what would you see, your future predictions to make that we need now to make better food and beverage experiences in future?
So I'd like to see with restaurants more openness in the menus. So I currently have 2 cases involving tahini, where people didn't know that tahini was sesame, but the restaurant used the word tahini. And even the people in the back didn't know that tahini was sesame. So I think more disclosure on menus. So I have this amazing girl in Massachusetts, 18-year-old, who's pushing to have Grubhub and DoorDash have allergen categories, so that when you order from Grubhub, you can say, I have this allergy, please make sure it's safe. Right now, it's sort of a mismatch of some websites allow you to put in the allergens, some don't. So this woman is really pushing to get more transparency in the online ordering system. And I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I mean, and then I would love that to be pushed to the event side of the world, but that's hard. But this is all such valuable information. And I know we all come from it from a perspective of, we have it in our families, we have it in ourselves, we have it in our clients, but it also, I think we all recognize based on the conversation here that it's better for business, right? And it's, financially wise, bringing in more customers, and then two, not having to pay $200,000 plus, in attorney's fees that you as a small business owner don't probably have, as a restaurant,
Right.
But it is, we've been chatting for an hour and I love this. And, but we could all chat a lot longer, but I want to thank you all so much for being a part of the Eating at a Meeting so far. This is the 300th episode for anybody who didn't hear it up front. Yay! Gosh, I can't believe it. I mean, it started in March of 2020 when I was interviewing Erin and 9 other women about amazing work they were doing around food and beverage. So, and I'm just mind blown that I lasted this long. But
I'm not, as the person you interviewed, I'm not. I remember saying at the time, you are a natural. Where did this come from? This is a hidden talent, and it continues to be. You've only gotten even better from there, and I thought it was amazing then. So this is no surprise, but I'm
no
really
surprise at all. I want to say something if I can. I've known Tracy a very, very long time, and she is the only person in our industry who is doing what she does. I'm constantly pushing and advocating for her, and I'm asking our fellow event pros to do the same, because it's not only important for you to plan your meeting, but if your attendees can't come and refuse to come because you are not thoughtful in your design and your planning, you need to hire someone like Tracy to come on board to help push your initiatives and run alongside you. So again, you don't have to take as much of those responsibilities as others. So I said it now. There.
Thank you. Thank you, Tess. Yeah, it really does play a huge amount in experience. I mean, you might not go to the conference next year because of the way you were treated. Actually, there's 2 comments in here. Let's see what just came through. Carolyn just said from the UK, just said great discussions. And Joan said, thank you all. And Jen, congratulations. Thank you. I appreciate that, Jen. Yeah, it is. Thank you for what you all are doing as well. I really appreciate it. And from the millions of people around the world that have food allergies and that are going to be eating at restaurants across the globe, it's really, really important of what you're doing. And thank you so much. So, and Roger's been on Instagram this whole time. Thank you, Roger. So lovely. And he said, thank you to everyone and the guests. So I wish I could transfer those comments over here, but, reach out to me, let's put everybody's comments, their links up here. I think I have them somewhere. Okay. Connect with Ewan. There's Ewan's LinkedIn address. And then here is Tess's, I'm going to give everybody their LinkedIn addresses. Laurel. There we go. And then Erin. And then I guess I should have mine up there, but, if you're listening to me on LinkedIn, you know that you're listening to it on my profile. So everyone, thank you again so much for being here. And I appreciate you and everything you do. And for everybody that was listening, stay safe and eat well. And you all, let me take a photo real quick. Ready? 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay. Thanks.